of what we have to meet with a $30 fee to be able to be on the centralized dispatch rotation list. In that, it tells you that you have to be insured. We have a tow company within the city of Nacogdoches own centralized dispatch that does not have insurance of their storage facility. It's been brought to the attention of centralized dispatch, not addressed. What that means is if a vehicle is towed to that storage facility, it is not insured, and that car is not covered if something does happen to the car in that storage facility, which in essence could come back on the city of Nacogdoches or the county of Nacogdoches for that. I ask that if we're going to have to follow these guidelines, fill out a packet each year, that someone monitors this and makes sure that the tow companies do stay up and are regulated appropriately. Also, we have large rotation. 2 record companies are on large rotation. One being Hopkins Wrecker Service, one being Joey Ross Wrecker Service. Right now, there is a game going on large rotation. What's happening is you have the capability of taking yourself off of rotation if you hear a call come across the scanner that says that it's a stalled 18-wheeler or anything else, but you might not want that call, so you pull yourself off before a dispatch is made for a large rotation wrecker. If you'll go back and look at the records, I didn't have time to request those. In the last 8 months, Joey Ross Towing Company has taken himself off on stalled 18-wheelers, and he's playing the game to get the calls for the accidents. We, in essence, as Hopkins, picks that call up. In the past, there has been a regulation or a guideline that was put in place that if the other tow company took your call while you were off, it served as them covering for you, but the next call that came in was that next tow company's call. Now it's only 2, so it's only 2 operating, but in the past there have been other large companies on rotation. I ask that we consider enforcing a guideline to stop this gaming, because we at Hopkins are there and we tow each time we call. And we come out because that is our business and that is what we do. A resolution to that would go back to where we used to be, which was a large rotation schedule weekly. And then that took that off the plate. You had a weekly call schedule, you were on that, and then it was covered. The other thing is in the packet, the large packet that you have stapled together, at section 102.382 are the rates. Those rates have been in place since 2007. We have not had an increase of rates to go along with what's happened with our economy. And we request that you look at that and align with others that have had increases of rates. For instance, a small tow in Nacogdoches is $150. Yes, that sounds high. Most cities are charging $225 to $300. We're not asking for that large of an increase, but we're asking for something to accommodate us for the increase in insurance and the fuel prices that have occurred. We also ask for consideration that we would start having annual meetings of the tow companies, of centralized dispatch, and of those that are monitoring our rotation schedules, and we align on what needs to be done. Because right now it's who knows what. You call, are you coming? If you're not coming and you give pushback, we are the troublemakers. And if you ask them, they'll tell you Hopkins Wrecker is probably causing trouble because we ask questions. But we want to know what's going on. This is our guys' how they make business, how they support their families. And we want to make sure that everyone is being treated equally in this. So I just ask that you consider these things and we talk about those in the future.
Okay. Thank you, Kay, very much. Okay, next, Milton Mora. Here you go, Garrett.
I made some copies of my comments for you all. My name's Milton Mora, and I just have some simple concerns, and I thought I'd like to visit with you about them tonight. And thank you for giving me a few minutes to stand here. I'm proud of my city commission and the manager. I rest easy at night knowing that you guys are looking after us. I really do. My comments are intended to be constructive and assisting in a smooth start to our fire station business. I want to make 2 points. Point number 1, I have brought up either 3 or 4 times in public The first time I brought it up was July 19th, 22 to the City Commission, and subsequent to that, 2 times at the rec center at meetings up there. So this is my point number 1. I'm bringing it up again, and I think this will be my last time. But note, it's as you know, an engineer was hired by the city to evaluate our fire protection system. The engineer recommended a relocation of 4 stations. As I recall, the estimated cost of this project is about $16 million. As I have suggested in 2 or 3 meetings previously, it seems that the IOS organization, Insurance Services Office, should be notified of our plan and request their comments. They may say, we do not review such ideas, or the engineer you have employed has proper credentials and his ideas are reliable for us. This engineer was previously an employee of IOS, but has not been an employee for the last 20 to 25 years. So, are his recommendations current? That is my concern. Like I said, this is the at least the third time I brought this up. When one wishes to start a project in Nacogdoches, the first step would be to visit the city departments to review for compliance with zoning, water availability, sanitary sewer setbacks, drainage, and so forth. Likewise, should we not request comment about this fire system modification by us from IOS, the controlling entity, before our beginning? My second point, I noticed I was out of town last week, and I got back and I read the newspaper. That's where all of this has to do with building in the floodplain. And I noticed that the article in the Sentinel said there was a consideration of this Central Fire Station being located near the Eugene Stern Library and so forth. But the city spending several $1 million for a new fire station in a floodplain could set a bad precedent for the other projects in the future. Yes, one may say that building in a floodplain is okay if you are at least 1 foot above a 100-year flood. This may or may not be a valid design criteria. 12 inches. Filling in a floodplain simply relocates floodwaters from one location to another, possibly from one owner to another owner. Consider the Hyder property on Pearl Street. I lived on Pearl Street for 23 years. The property was filled with soil in order to build apartments. The floodwaters displaced here were elevated slightly and moved to another location, owned to someone else's property. Some of the apartment complex being built on West Austin, floodwaters have been relocated from this original location and set at a higher water level on somebody else's property. You've taken the water from one situation and given it to somebody else. I don't know what problems might be at those locations. Consider Pecan Acres Park. A new restroom was built and flooded by 32 inches of water before it was completed in June 23, only to be flooded again at some point. It was a big mess. I saw it. Recently, Senate Bill 1 was passed and prevents the building in camp area floodplains and prevents housing people in those same floodplains. So, the word floodplain has taken on an important meaning recently. You've got West Virginia floods, you've got the floods in the hill country, and so the word floodplain is one that maybe has not been too seriously taken in the past, but I think it's taking on some more seriousness now. So, in my conclusion, I would ask you to consider notifying the ISO about our fire system plans and see if they have any comments. Number 2, be careful about building in a floodplain. The finish floor of a new building, if that's what you choose to do, you might coordinate with the Texas Department of Transportation and with the finished surface of their bridge that they're gonna build in East Main, they'll probably have a hydraulics division in Austin helping them to set that elevation. And I would think they wouldn't want it flooded, you know, and there may be something that you just want to check, when you're building a new building, to check and see what they've decided about their bridge height out there, you know. So anyhow, I've just been, I've been concerned about this for a pretty good while. I just thought at this point in time, when you're just getting started, you might as well get started out right. It seems like, and it may be already done, I don't know, but it seems like there needs to be some coordination with this iOS business. I don't know. It's what it seems like to me. Thank you very much.
Thank
for
you,
your time.
Milton.
I appreciate y'all's service. Okay?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, next items to be removed from the consent agenda. I'd like to remove item 5C, please.
I make a motion that we approve the balance of the consent agenda.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? None. Motion carries unanimously.
Mayor, on item 5C, I will be recusing myself and stepping out at this time.
Okay.
Mayor, Council. Item 5C is a memorandum of understanding between the City of Nacogdoches and Martinsville ISD PD. And basically, it covers mutual aid for our city, our SWAT team, or whoever we need to call out, and the Martinsville ISD PD. And we also provide a SRO on occasion, or we're allowed to, for Martinsville ISD. So that's what it covers. Any questions?
This is normal. You've done this.
It's very normal.
Okay.
This is gonna be an annual for all school districts
Okay.
to enter in MOUs for us and the county.
Okay. All right, any questions?
How many officers they have in Martinsville?
One chief.
Just one chief?
One chief.
So, we're basically their police department too.
Well, basically, if they do get a hot call, an active shooter or something of that nature, we will respond. Now, they do use other agencies. The county provides an SRO also when needed, so they will sign the same MOU.
Any other questions? I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding between the City of Nacogdoches and Martinsville ISD Police Department.
Second.
Have a motion and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Okay, we'll go to the regular agenda. Item 6A, consider an ordinance of the City of Nacogdoches closing, vacating, and abandoning a portion of street right-of-way commonly known as Reedy Street, providing findings of fact, providing severability, effective date, and open meetings clauses, and providing for related matters. Executive Director of Infrastructure, Mike New.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Mike New, Executive Director of Development and Infrastructure. This item is maybe part of two different actions that you'll see on the agenda tonight. One of those being abandonment of a section of Reedy Street right-of-way. This comes in our communication with Wright Coop. I'll walk through some of the previous actions. They've purchased some property adjacent to Reedy Street on the west side. They own property adjacent to Reedy Street on the east side. It's a small section. The city has no intent, nor would we extend Reedy Street all the way through to the South Loop. We're simply, we have no need for this street as it is today, with Wright Coop's intentions potentially to improve their site and development around that Reedy Street section. All we need to do essentially is move a fire hydrant. We've done that, and Wright Coop has agreed to reimburse the city for that effort. Our goal here is to abandon this section and then proceed to the next item, to proceed with a quitclaim deed. We have to abandon this right away in order to proceed with a quitclaim. So this in effect furthers our effort to reduce our need to maintain a street section that really gets little to no use. Previous actions, I'll go through a quick history. Previous actions in May included rezoning of the property to the west of Reedy Street, 3 parcels. I'll show you the location here. Those 3 parcels that are adjacent to this requested abandonment section, those were recently rezoned to light industrial from agriculture in May, and then in December of 2012, going even further back, the city had previously approved or abandoned the right-of-way on those south 4 parcels. So as Brightcube has extended its ownership of these parcels and shown an interest in development, we are obliging by looking to abandon this section, let Brightcube kind of assume its goals for development, and then we'll take care of that section that's just to the north that serves other properties. And I'll entertain any questions from the council.
Okay, any questions?
Have you talked to the people that live on those streets, or are there people that live on those streets?
The property owners, actually, right there on the corner, the southwest corner of that intersection of Seal and Reedy Street, they've recently rezoned their development intentions. They rezoned that to R4 maybe 3 or 4 months ago, so there is some activity there. To the south of that, we have not heard from those property owners, but that road will remain open, so that right-of-way will remain active.
Were you required to send a notice or anything like that?
No, not for this abandonment.
Okay.
That's not part of our requirement. Any questions?
I just wanted to thank Brightcube for everything, the organization does, the company does.
And it's been a good communication.
Yeah, great. You ready for a motion?
Yes, ma'am.
I move that we approve the ordinance outlined in item 6A.
Second.
Have a motion to second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next, item 6B, consider approval of a quitclaim deed of property approximately .30 acres plus or minus.
And that's a policy of the city, so we're meeting that policy as well. You can see the proposed tax rate on there, and just to remind citizens, we're having a 5.41% increase on water and sewer rates and a 4% increase on sanitation collection services. I'd be happy to answer any questions after the public hearing.
Okay, I'll open the public hearing. Any questions or comments from the audience, please? Mr. Smith.
I'm Sammy Smith, and I want to speak on one item on the budget, and that is the transfer of enterprise funds to the general fund. I came to the city council way back in 2018, 7 years ago, opposing water sewer rate increases and a transfers to the general fund. The city manager and I had a long conversation. He explained to me that we needed the money in the general fund, and he didn't have any idea as to where else to get it. So he was taking it away from the enterprise funds. The process has continued over the past 7 years, and I was overwhelmed when I got a copy of the budget proposed that was in the Nacogdoches Sentinel this year with the proposal of over $7 million transferred from the enterprise funds into the general fund. In my opinion, we have a major problem with this that the council needs to address. I've been saying that for 7 years now. Nothing's happened. The rationale is follows. Basically, state common law funds from a utility fund was permissible since the city had an equity interest in the utility funds, and was permissible as long as the amount of the transfer was reasonable. Guys, $7 million and almost a quarter of the operating budget of the general fund is not reasonable. The Texas Municipal League did a survey of what cities were doing relative to how much they could transfer as trying to determine what was a reasonable amount. And what they came up with was, on average, that cities were recognizing 7% of transfer is compared to the total operating budget. In other words, their total operating budget in the general fund was on 7% was the max Again, in this year, 2025, there was a bill introduced in the Senate. Same thing. If it had been passed, nobody could transfer funds in the general fund in the city. Both of those bills never made it out of committee, but it gives you a feeling, there's a feeling out there in the public that this is a problem, and we can't get anybody to address it. I've been researching and thinking about these transfers off and on now for the past 7 years, and considered the test of reasonableness and concluded that in the perspective of our city, the maximum amount we should be transferring is in the range of 2.2 million, which is a whole lot less than 7 million. It's possible that we may not be able to transfer any funds at all. If you go look at the municipal code with the state of Texas, there's a section called, it's 1502.058, says that you cannot transfer funds if you have a bond issue that has, in that fund, that has a revenue bond in that fund that hasn't been paid off. Now, I don't know whether our bond, the $30 million that you guys have approved already, was done under 1502.058. There's an exception in 1502.059 that basically says if you inform the bondholders that you're going to rip off the revenue into general fund when it's a revenue bond, and you tell the bondholders, then you can do it. Now, I buy municipal bonds on occasion. If I knew that I was buying a revenue bond and I had a city that was finagling off the utility revenue, I would want more interest or not buy the bond. It's a riskier bond. So I don't know what we did. That's a question legal counsel can answer maybe, because I can't. The issue with the bond bothers me just on a concept standpoint. The city is proposing this year to transfer over $7 million into the general fund, and at the same time is borrowing $30 million in the water sewer fund. That doesn't make sense to me. If I look at it from a conceptual standpoint, I can conclude, hey, you're borrowing money on a bond issue in order to fund the general fund. You borrowed $30 million and you shovel $7 million to the general fund. That's the reason that 1502.058 was written, probably. To me, conceptually, the bond issue doesn't pass the smell test. Regardless of whether the bonds is under 1502.059 or not, the city appears to be ignoring a Supreme Court decision in that San Antonio ISD versus City of San Antonio, where the Texas Supreme Court says those transfers must be reasonable. $7.2 million is not reasonable. It's almost 25% of your general fund budget. Now, I've been talking about this for 7 years. I haven't made any inroads. I have suggested to City Council, or some members of City Council, personally, that we ought to set up some kind of plan that over the long run, we're going to reduce the transfers. How can you do that? You got to worry about the ad valorem tax rate, and you got to worry about managing the expenditures in the general fund very closely. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Sammy. Okay. Any other comments from the audience? Todd? Yeah, you close it now?
There's no other comments.
Okay. Okay, no other comments from the audience. I'll close the public hearing. Mr. Semino?
Yeah, allow me to address the concerns that Mr. Smith raised. Two of them that I heard, is it reasonable and is it legal? So let me talk about is it reasonable first. I have a handout for the council members. What I've handed out to the council is basically a trend, a payment made from surplus revenue of a utility system, park, or swimming pool as provided by the preceding authorized authorizing the issuance of public securities under this chapter. If you turn to the next page, that's Government Code 1502.059, and it says a municipality and officers and utility trustees may transfer to the municipality's general fund and may use for general or special purpose revenue of any municipally owned utility system in the amount and to the extent authorized in the indenture, deed of trust of ordinance, providing or securing payment of public securities issued under this chapter of similar law. So, while I've been doing this for 20-plus years, audited many cities, I knew what we're doing is above board, but I went ahead and passed this concern to our bond counsel. So that's the attorneys that represent us on every single bond issue. And their reply to my concern, or Mr. Smith's concern, is in that next paragraph on the first page. It says, the ordinances related to the city's water and sewer revenue bonds in section 13, which is the flow of funds section, provide that the revenues derived from the water and sewer system can be used as provided therein, which after making the payment of operating and maintenance expenses, debt services, any required reserves, and the payment to any other indebtedness payable in whole or in part from the net revenues of the system may be appropriated and used for any purpose now and hereafter permitted by law. So you can see that they're clearly on board and support this. Everything is legal. In the opinion of our rating agencies, it's reasonable. Happy to answer any questions.
When I first came on the council, I do remember the audit from Tyler. I don't know what their name is. Does anybody remember the name of the?
Our auditors, whoever.
Patillo Brown and Hill.
Okay, Patillo Brown and Hill. The main person that was giving the audit mentioned that our rate of interdepartmental transfers was high, too high. He said it's normally around 7%, 2 to 7%, and it's now up in the 22% or 23%.
21%.
Did that ring any bells with anybody?
I've been here for the last two audits, about to go on a third audit, and they've never mentioned a word of it to me.
So that was an aberration that one time that I heard it?
I used to be an auditor in their shoes. It's not their job to opine on the reasonableness of that number. Their job is to opine on the presentation of the financial statements, looking at the balance sheet and income statement. I would find it unusual that they're opining on the amount of a transfer.
Well, I know that it stuck with me because he said the only thing unusual in this audit that I could find, because he said everything's great except that your transfers are too high.
Last 2 years, they didn't say a word to me about it.
Okay, well, I'm just trying to ask.
So, first, I appreciate Dr. Smith, and I appreciate people's concerns that they bring up because it's an opportunity to educate us all. Would you say just a little bit about how these funds are used and why we have a reasonable transfer? And the reason I'm asking that is because I started thinking about who is paid out of the general fund and who is paid out of either the sanitation or utility funds. And you answered a lot of my questions through this. Go ahead and explain that.
So I don't know if this is the answer you're looking for, but the governmental accounting standard boards, they basically set the rules for audits. And one of their statements say that enterprise funds, which is the utility fund and the sanitation fund, need to operate as a business for profit. And in doing so, since they do not pay property taxes or sales taxes, they have what's very commonly used across the entire state is a pilot. It's a payment in lieu of taxes. And what that's designed to do is to make sure that your taxpayers are not subsidizing your enterprise funds, because from the city manager to the city attorney to me in finance to the people in HR, the people in technology, we're all providing services to the enterprise funds. And if the enterprise funds don't reimburse the general fund for those expenses, then the taxpayers are subsidizing the users of the system. So it's basically more transparent and it's fair to both users of the system and to the taxpayers.
That's me. I was thinking about this. This may not be a proper comparison, but I've written a lot of grants and I've worked with a lot of organizations that get funds, and there is indirect costs is how they usually call them, and the indirect costs count for example, I don't know if any of the staff here tonight are paid out of utility or sanitation. I don't think so. Oh, you're paid, okay. And anyway, so the indirect cost rates are calculated on a percentage and on a, and they're in line with this 20 to 25% is what it usually costs when you're doing a grant. And then you have to pay for all of the other overhead, for police to come out on calls and for the city manager. And I think about how many times we're actually considering all these things in a city council meeting.
Well, can I throw something else in? So
Please do.
the indirect cost or overhead cost, the fully burdened cost, having, yes, dealt with that on federal grants, but also having dealt with that, whether you're talking about a transit system, private sector, all of the above. So, yes, that is why it's in there. Now, you can talk about the revenue piece. I know there was a comment made about your ad valorem taxes. One thing I didn't hear was sales tax.
Right.
And part of this also, and if you look back, and Todd, I think Todd tried to look back, this is decades, 30 years, you think, roughly? At least. So if you want to look at the total cost of doing business and your revenue constriction and also what you've been doing or not doing over the past 30 years, this, ironically, we're actually doing more utility-related and even landfill-related work right now with this staff than in past years, and that percentage is going down. I'm not casting any aspersions on those in the past, but I would opine, is that like an Irish pine tree? Sorry. I had to work that in for you, Kathleen. I would opine, sorry, that in the past, because there was not much physical growth of Nacogdoches in decades, and we're about to get it, which is why we're doing all the capital projects, both from transfers from reserves and through bonds, is because you had flat growth of ad valorem and sales tax, and you didn't have both pennies. And I hate to say that, but that elephant in the room, that was probably their go-to back then, 30 some odd years ago. However, your costs were going up. So part of that reasonableness test was, as costs were going up, they said, well, we better account for everything in our overhead rate effectively that we legally can, that's justifiable. Otherwise, we're going to have another set of problems. Or conversely, another thing that Todd mentioned is your ad valorem tax rate. Or you'd go back to a model of doing the 8% back when you could do it, total tax increase on ad valorem every year to cover it. Because when we went through the prior budget reviews, including COVID, some of those years, yes, you had 7.7% inflation. So you can just use that as one example. You could go back to the 90s. You could go back to the bubble in 2008. And God forbid you go back to the 80s and look at those inflation rates. You only had so many options to cover those costs. And I don't know if Todd has anything else to add to that, but there was probably a reason why, and it was probably a combination of limited revenue and what they had as alternatives, But I would say this is the era where we're actually doing, as a staff, more actual capital projects. It's probably more, in my opinion, it's probably more justifiable at the moment. And if we can continue to reduce that percentage over time, obviously we would. But that also begs the question on the larger revenue source, which is a whole different subject.
Well, I just want to say that this may be an uncomfortable conversation, but I think these kind of things help us because, like Sammy said, he's been saying this for 7 years and hasn't been explained to him or hasn't had any relief from it. So I think it helps the transparency to show the public that you're not trying to take $7 million that you're not supposed to take. And it's not an accusation. It's a chance for us to explain to the public why we do what we do. And they're hard decisions sometimes, and they cost people money. And I think people feel better when they know that, oh, okay, well, that's where my money's going, and that's why it's going. And this man here who knows a lot about it, and this man here, they both say, this is what we're doing, and this is why we're doing it, and you've got facts to back it up. So I think this is a good conversation to have. It is not an accusation.
I will disagree with you, Brad, as far as accusation. When you publicly call somebody out as this being illegal, that is an accusation. There's no question about it.
It's a perception.
You can't sugarcoat that in any way, shape, or form. None. Period.
I think I win.
Just for the record, I did meet with Mr. Smith for an hour last year with our prior finance director. Any other questions?
I just appreciate all of you. I do think it's a very helpful discussion, and I think it takes courage to come out and ask questions. And so I appreciate everybody who does that. Our job, and I appreciate those of you who answer the questions too. And I thought the questions were good enough that I sat down and visited again in depth, and I went and looked through the materials myself. And I'm comfortable with it, and I do think it's, that's all I have to say. Thank you, though, very much for spending the hour, for spending the time, for looking up answers that we need. We really appreciate it.
And believe me, if this was Monaco, the casino would be paying for the utility system.
Todd, how much time did you spend on this?
Probably several hours.
Did you have anything else to do?
Just on this one
Yeah.
issue here, because I got late notice of it, but I spend lots of hours prepping for all these budget workshops and hearings, because you never know what's going to be asked. So.
Right. Yeah. I appreciate you being here. You have been invaluable to us. You got us out of one hell of a major bind a year or two ago. As far as confidence, I have every confidence in the world in your department and your staff and everything that y'all do, and I really appreciate it.
Appreciate the comments.
Mm-hmm. Do we need a motion? Okay, all right. Okay, any other comments on the public hearing? Okay, there being none, we'll go to item 6D, action on the 2025-2026 proposed budget in compliance with city charter requirements.
Thank you,
Todd.
Mayor and Council. Again, Todd Semino, Interim Director of Finance. So state law requires that after you hold the budget hearing, you're required to take action. Technically, you've met all of the state requirements to approve the budget tonight, but you haven't met one of the charter requirements, which is you need to wait 2 weeks after the proposed budget was issued in the paper. It wasn't issued till August 24th, so technically you can't approve the budget until after September 7th. So the action I'm asking you to take tonight would be postponing the approval of the budget until the September 16th meeting.